When you're told you're nothing your entire life, you start to believe it. You hollow yourself out to match their expectations, carving away pieces of your soul until the emptiness feels like home. Zara had been empty since birth, or so they said. Born without a wolf in a world where your beast determined your worth, she'd learned to make herself smaller, quieter, invisible. She'd clung to one desperate hope, that her fated mate would see past the hollow space where her wolf should be. But hope, as it turned out, was the cruelest curse of all. Because when your mate looks at you with disgust instead of love, when he sells you like livestock to pay his debts, you don't just lose your future. You lose the lie you'd been living that being broken could ever be enough. And the worst part? The pain of rejection hurt less than the shame of having believed, even for a moment, that she deserved to be chosen. Chapter 1. The blood moon hung fat and red above the Stone Valley pack circle, painting everything the color of fresh wounds. The night air tasted of sage smoke and coming winter, sharp enough to burn Zara's lungs with each careful breath. She stood at the gathering's edge where she always stood in the margins, half hidden behind broader shoulders and stronger bodies. Her only decent dress hung loose, the waist cinched tight with rope she'd had to knot 3 times. Her hair, braided tight and coiled at the base of her neck, reached past her knees, her one beauty, though most called it a burden. The weight of it made her neck ache. Around her, unmated wolves shifted weight from foot to foot, excitement crackling through the crowd like lightning before a storm. 2 guards flanked the ceremonial circle, as they always did during bond ceremonies in case someone rejected their mate and tried to run. Tonight, the goddess would reveal fated bonds. Tonight, futures would be decided. Zara's hands trembled against her thighs, her breath clouded in the cold. Don't hope, she told herself, cataloging the exits purely out of habit, the way she'd learned to catalog all escape routes. Hope is for wolves with futures. But when the blood moon's light touched her skin, warming places that had been cold for 20 years, she couldn't stop the treacherous whisper. What if? The bond snapped into place like a rope pulled taut. Zara gasped, her chest hollow, always hollow, suddenly burned with awareness, as if someone had poured molten gold into the empty space behind her ribs. She looked up, unable to stop herself, searching the circle for the other end of this impossible thread. Alpha Kale stood across from her, golden-haired and perfect, the pack's pride. The man who'd once defended her from pack bullies before he learned defending her would cost him status. Their eyes met. For 3 heartbeats, his expression softened. His lips parted. His hand twitched toward her, then froze. Longing flickered across his face like sunlight through storm clouds, and Zara truly saw the boy he'd been before ambition carved him hollow too. The pack went silent, watching. Zara's heart cracked open. The goddess had seen her, had chosen her, had given her Kale's gaze cut to the pack elders, to his father, the Alpha, watching with expectant eyes, to the visiting Beta from Red Claw Pack, arms crossed and judging. Zara watched him choose in real time, watched ambition strangle the softness in his eyes. She could have looked away, but she forced herself to watch, to remember this. I, Alpha Kale of Stone Valley. His voice rang clear and cold across the circle. Reject you, Zara the Hollow. The words punched through her chest. Her legs gave out, body crumpling before her mind understood what was happening. I will not weaken my bloodline with a wolfless cripple. He spat the word cripple like poison on his tongue. The mate bond shattered like glass behind her ribs. Zara hit the ground, the impact jarring through her knees, her palms. The pain stole her breath, her sight. Everything beyond the white-hot agony of a bond broken before it could form. Her mouth opened, but no sound came, just the taste of copper and ash. Somewhere above her, Kale's voice continued. However, even the wolfless have their uses. Zara forced her eyes open, blinking through tears and blood-red moonlight. Through the haze of pain, she saw him address the elders with practiced composure, as if he hadn't just murdered something sacred. Stone Valley owes tribute to the Sultanate of Azar. The agreement requires a bride. He gestured toward her crumpled form like indicating a piece of damaged furniture. Since she's useless as a Luna, she'll be useful as payment. At least the Beast King won't care that she's defective. So it was planned, Zara thought with crystalline clarity cutting through the pain. The rejection was just formality before the transaction. Murmurs rippled through the crowd like wind through dead grass. The Beast of the Sands, someone whispered. The words carried on smoke-scented air. He kills his brides, another voice added. 12 dead already. They say he eats them. Better her than someone who matters. Her father's shoulders hunched inward. Beside him, her younger sister Ilara took one step forward, then stopped as their mother's hand clamped on her arm. Ilara's mouth shaped the word no, but no sound emerged. At least someone had tried. The two ceremonial guards moved forward. Iron shackles closed around Zara's wrists with a cold click that echoed through the silent circle. They hauled her to her feet, and she let them, preserving what little strength she had left. If she was going to die, she'd need every scrap of will to die well. They weren't rejecting her. They were executing her with paperwork. The guards dragged her toward the black carriage, waiting beyond the circle, all dark wood and barred windows, designed for cargo that might try to escape. As they shoved her toward it, Zara looked back once. KL stood in the blood moon's light, jaw tight, hands clenched so hard his knuckles had gone white. His throat worked as he swallowed. His eyes met hers across the distance, and for one suspended moment, his hand reached toward her before dropping uselessly to his side. Then he turned away, his spine rigid, his retreat almost as desperate as her capture. Zara didn't cry, didn't plead, didn't curse him or the goddess or the pack that had never wanted her. She just stared at his retreating back until he disappeared from view, her silence louder and more damning than any scream could be. The carriage door slammed shut. Through barred windows, she watched Stone Valley fade into darkness, watched the faces of her pack blur into nothing, watched the only home she'd ever known vanish like smoke. Only the blood moon followed, huge and red and relentless. She settled into the corner, pulled her knees to her chest, and wrapped her arms around her shins. The shackles bit into her wrists, already chafing her skin raw. The carriage smelled of old fear and iron. At least where I'm going, she thought. No one will be disappointed. The dead have no expectations. The wheels began to turn, carrying her toward a monster's palace and a fate everyone agreed she deserved. Chapter 2. The carriage rattled through 3 days and 3 nights, each mile carrying Zara farther from the only world she'd known. The first night, she didn't sleep, just sat in the darkness, feeling the phantom ache where her mate bond had been like a tooth pulled, leaving a socket that her tongue kept finding. The shackles had rubbed her wrists raw, blood crusting around the iron cuffs. Dawn brought a guard change. 2 new men, their voices carrying through the wooden walls as if she weren't there at all. Poor creature, the younger one said, not unkindly. Beast King'll tear her apart first night. Heard the last bride lasted 3 hours. The older guard spat into the dirt, screamed herself hoarse before the end. Zara pressed closer to the barred window, listening. What's he do to him? Dunno, but whatever's left gets burned before sunrise. Never enough to bury proper. The younger guard's voice dropped. My cousin served in the Onyx Palace once, said the Sultan's cursed. Can't control the shift. Once the rage takes him, he can't tell friend from foe, just kills everything that moves. Blood rage, Zara thought, filing the information away like she'd learned to file everything small survivals, tiny rebellions of knowledge. That's what they call it. Why's he keep taking brides then? Trying to break it, innit? Needs a mate to calm the beast. But every girl's wolf challenges his dominance soon as she sees him. The older guard laughed, bitter and knowing. Their wolves bristle, his wolf attacks. Can't help himself. Zara's hand moved to her chest, to the hollow space where a wolf should live. I have no wolf to challenge him, she realized. Nothing to bristle, nothing to provoke. The thought sat strange in her mind, neither hope nor fear, just observation. By the second day, the landscape began to change. Forest gave way to scrubland, then to something Zara had only seen in the merchant caravan's tapestries. Sand, Endless, rolling sand the color of honey and amber, stretching toward a horizon that shimmered with heat. The temperature climbed. The air grew dry, stealing moisture from her lips and throat. Through the bars, she caught her first glimpse of the Sultanate's border, a town of white stone and curved archways, buildings topped with onion domes that gleamed like pearls against the brilliant sky. People moved through the streets in flowing robes and wrapped turbans, bright silks in colors. Stone Valley had never dreamed of saffron yellow, peacock blue, deep crimson. The women wore veils that left only their eyes visible, those eyes lined with dark kohl that made them look like desert cats. Market sounds drifted through. Merchants hawking spices that made Zara's nose burn with their foreignness. Cinnamon, cardamom, something sharp and golden. The musical clash of hammered copper. Voices calling in a language she didn't understand, the words rising and falling like song. This was a world that had existed while she scrubbed floors in Stone Valley. A world that hadn't known or cared she was dying slowly in the margins. The carriage didn't stop. They rolled through the border town and into true desert, where the sand became everything. Dunes rose like waves frozen mid-crest, their shadows sharp as blade edges in the slanting afternoon light. By the third evening, the guard's conversation had shifted. "There," one breathed, voice tight with something between awe and fear. Zara pressed her face to the bars. The onyx palace rose from the desert like a dark jewel, its black stone walls absorbing the dying sun's light rather than reflecting it. Minarets spiraled toward the sky, their peaks crowned with crescents of hammered gold. Massive domes swelled above the walls, their surfaces inlaid with patterns that caught the light geometric stars within stars. Endless interlocking designs that made her eyes ache trying to follow them. An oasis surrounded the palace, impossibly green against the sand-date palms and flowering trees, the sound of water where no water should be. Magic, or engineering so advanced it might as well be magic. Beautiful, terrible. A palace built by Jinn in the old stories, back when the world was young and the boundaries between realms were thin. The palace where 12 brides had died, the palace that would be her tomb. The carriage slowed as they approached gates tall enough to let giants pass. The gates themselves were bronze, worked with more of those dizzying patterns, tessellations that seemed to shift and breathe in the fading light. Guards appeared, silent as shadows, wearing armor of blackened steel and flowing dark robes. Their faces were wrapped, leaving only their eyes visible eyes, that tracked the carriage with the blank efficiency of men who'd seen this delivery before. The gates swung open without a sound. The temperature dropped instantly, as if the palace walls themselves created a pocket of coolness in the desert heat. The scent changed to jasmine and myrrh, incense and something darker, something wild. The carriage stopped. Zara's heart, which had been steady through 3 days of travel, suddenly hammered against her ribs. The door opened. An elderly woman stood there, her face lined but her eyes sharp as flint. She wore robes of deep blue, keys hanging from a chain at her waist, the mark of authority. Her gaze swept over Zara with the practiced assessment of someone evaluating livestock. "Out," she said. Her accent was different from Stone Valley's, rounder and more musical, but her tone was universal. Command. Zara's legs had gone stiff from 3 days of sitting. She stumbled as she climbed down, and the woman caught her elbow, not gentle, but not cruel either. "Practical." "Another one," the woman murmured, unlocking Zara's shackles with one of her keys. The iron fell away, leaving bloody rings around Zara's wrists. "I am Amira. You'll follow me. You'll speak only when spoken to. You'll do exactly as I say. Understood?" Zara nodded, rubbing her freed wrists. Amira's expression softened, just for a moment. "May the old stars have mercy on you, child." Then she turned, leading Zara through a servant's entrance cut into the massive wall away from the grand bronze gates, away from whatever throne room or great hall lay beyond. Down, always down, into the belly of the palace, where girls were prepared for monsters. Chapter 3. Amira led Zara through corridors that twisted like a serpent's spine, each turn taking them deeper into the palace's underground warren. The walls here were plain black stone, No gold or decoration, the servants' realm, hidden from royal eyes. They descended a final staircase into a large chamber lit by oil lamps that cast dancing shadows across the walls. The air hung thick with fierce sweat and perfume trying to mask it. 5 young women huddled together on cushions scattered across the floor. All of them looked up when Zara entered, their eyes wide and glassy with terror. They assessed her immediately the way prey animals assess whether a newcomer is threat or fellow victim. One girl sat apart from the others, spine straight despite her fear. Her clothes marked her as wealthy, fine wool dyed deep purple, silver threads at the hems. She had the look of someone used to being obeyed. "What pack?" the girl asked, her voice sharp with the kind of superiority that came from never having been told no. "Stone Valley," Zara answered quietly. The girl's lip curled. "Never heard of it. You must be poor." Her eyes traveled over Zara's patched dress with undisguised disdain. A younger girl beside her, maybe 16, with tear-streaked cheeks, whispered, "Does it matter? We're all dead by morning." Another girl, dark-skinned and trembling, wrapped her arms around herself. "They say he eats them. That's why there's nothing left to bury." The wealthy girl Layla, Zara would learn later, laughed, but the sound held no humor. "We have wolves. Strong bloodlines. We'll fare better than some wolfless stray." Her eyes cut back to Zara with vicious certainty. Zara said nothing. She'd learned long ago that silence was its own kind of armor. The door opened again. A severe woman entered, keys jangling at her waist, different from Amira's kindness. This one wore authority like a blade. Her face could have been carved from the same black stone as the palace walls. "Strip," she commanded. "Now." The girls froze. "You are the Sultan's property," the woman continued, her voice like gravel scraping bone. "What you thought was yours, your modesty, your dignity, your bodies belongs to him. The sooner you understand this, the easier your death will be." Her name was Yasmin. Zara could see it in how the other servants flinched from her, how even Amira's gentle eyes grew hard when she looked at her. One by one, the girls removed their clothes. Some cried. Layla's hands shook despite her earlier bravado. The youngest girl turned away from the others, shoulders hunched with shame. Zara folded her patched dress carefully, her last possession, and set it aside. She refused to show them her humiliation. They couldn't take what she'd learned to keep locked inside. Yasmin walked among them like a slave trader inspecting merchandise, her eyes clinical and cruel. "This one's too thin," she said, stopping before a girl with hollow cheeks. "This one's skin is scarred." Her fingers traced old marks on another girl's back. She paused at Zara, studying her hair still braided, the plait thick as a ship's rope, and reaching past her hips even coiled up. "At least she has one asset," Yasmin muttered, then louder, to all of them, "Into the baths." The bathing chamber was vast, a sunken pool lined with blue tiles that formed patterns like waves. Steam rose from water that smelled of roses and something sharper, something medicinal. Around the pool's edge, servants waited with rough brushes and harsh soap. The water hit Zara first ice cold despite the steam, shocking her skin, stealing her breath. Before she could adjust, rough hands grabbed her, scrubbing at her arms, her back, her legs with brushes that left her skin raw and burning. They unbraided her hair. The weight of it finally released after 20 years of being coiled and controlled. It fell past her knees in a dark curtain, and the servants attacked it with the same vicious efficiency, washing, combing, tearing through knots that had formed over months of neglect. Zara bit her lip hard enough to taste copper. She wouldn't cry, wouldn't give them that. "The Sultan won't tolerate dirt in his palace," Yasmin announced from the pool's edge, watching their humiliation with satisfaction. "Not that it matters. By dawn, you'll be ash. Try to die quietly." The last one's screaming kept the entire palace awake. The words were meant to break them. And they did. The youngest girl started sobbing, her shoulders shaking. Even Layla had gone pale, all her earlier confidence draining away. But Zara noticed something beneath Yasmin's cruelty. The way her hand trembled slightly as she gripped her keys, the tightness around her eyes, the careful distance she kept from the door that led upstairs. "She's afraid too," Zara thought. She just hides it with cruelty. Everyone in this palace was trapped. The servants, the guards, the brides. All of them caught in the gravity of whatever lived in the rooms above. After the bathing came the dressing. Ceremonial robes of translucent silk, white and gold, barely modest, designed to reveal more than they concealed. Gold chains draped across their shoulders and around their waists, delicate anklets that chimed with each step, armbands that caught the lamplight. Servants combed Zara's hair until it shone like polished wood, leaving it loose to flow down her back. They lined her eyes with kohl in the style of the sultanate dark lines that made her look older, more mysterious. They rubbed scented oils into her skin until she gleamed like one of the palace's bronze statues. When they finally let her look in the polished bronze mirror, Zara didn't recognize herself. She looked like a palace painting, like a beautiful corpse prepared for a royal funeral. The other girls looked the same, identical in their lovely, doomed presentation. All individuality stripped away, replaced with uniform beauty designed for a single terrible purpose. Yasmin assembled them in a line, adjusting their robes with rough hands. Then she laid out the rules, each one delivered like a nail in a coffin. Keep your eyes down. Speak only if spoken to. Do not shift in his presence. Your wolf will trigger his blood rage. Do not run. He will hunt you. If, she paused, letting bitter amusement color her voice, you survive the night, ring the bell by the door. She gestured to a small golden bell sitting on a table in the corner. So innocent, so delicate, a tiny instrument of hope. In 50 years, Yasmin said, no one has rung it, but the Sultan is optimistic. Her smile was a knife. 2 girls were openly crying now. Layla had gone silent, her earlier arrogance completely extinguished. The dark-skinned girl whispered prayers in a language Zara didn't understand. Only Zara remained still, her face a careful mask of nothing. He will choose one of you tonight, Yasmin continued. The rest will serve the palace until next month. If tonight's choice dies, when tonight's choice dies, we repeat this. Pray he chooses someone else. She moved toward the door, then paused, looking back at them with something that might have been pity in a kinder woman. The last girl who pleased him lasted until dawn. If you're clever, you'll displease him. Quickly. A fast death is a mercy in the Onyx Palace. The door closed behind her with a sound like a crypt ceiling. In the silence that followed, Zara could hear her own heartbeat, slow and steady despite everything. She'd survived 20 years of being called nothing. She'd survived rejection and sale and 3 days in shackles. She could survive this too, or die trying. Either way, it would be on her terms. Chapter 4. They were taken upstairs, one at a time. Layla went first. Zara watched her disappear through the massive doors, spine straight with forced bravery. The doors closed with a sound like a judge's gavel. Minutes passed. Then they heard it, a scream, sharp and brief, followed by scrambling footsteps, a low growl that vibrated through the floor itself, making the oil lamps flicker. Then, silence. The doors opened. Layla stumbled out, face drained of all color, eyes wild as a spooked horse. She couldn't speak, just shook her head frantically when the younger girl tried to ask what happened. One by one, the others went. One by one, they returned, terrified but alive. Finally, only Zara remained. The guard who came for her had kind eyes beneath his rapt face. Your turn, girl, he said, his voice carrying the weight of condolence. He placed a hand on her shoulder, not rough, not cruel. May your death be swift. The doors opened before her. Zara stepped through, and they closed behind her with a finality that echoed in her bones. The chamber was vast enough to swallow sound. Open to the night sky through soaring arches, the room had no ceiling, only the stars and the waning crescent moon watching like distant, indifferent gods. The floor was polished black obsidian that reflected the moonlight like dark water. The temperature had dropped despite the desert heat outside. The air tasted of spice and musk and something wild, something that made her prey instincts scream even though she'd never had a wolf to give her those instincts. Zara stood alone in the center of the vast space, her translucent robes offering no warmth, her bare feet cold against the stone. Something was breathing in the shadows, heavy, labored, the sound of something in pain, or barely controlling rage, or both. "Come forward," a voice commanded from the darkness. Not human, not quite. The words were shaped through a throat not meant for speech, gravel sliding over broken glass, each syllable forced and wrong. Zara's heart hammered, but her feet moved. One step, another, toward the darkness where the breathing came from. A shape emerged into the moonlight, and Zara's breath caught. This is what they fear. Sultan Rashid, if this broken thing could still claim that name, stood at least 7 feet tall. His form was trapped between man and beast, a permanent half-shift that looked like agony made flesh. His face was elongated, jaw too wide, teeth visible even with his mouth closed sharp and meant for tearing. His eyes burned gold like molten metal in a forge, no white visible, no mercy in them. His hands ended in obsidian claws that clicked against the stone when he moved. His skin was dark, covered in patches of scales that caught the moonlight. His shoulders were too broad, muscles corded with tension, his whole body radiating barely leashed violence. This wasn't a monster. This was someone cursed into monstrosity. Someone trapped in endless transformation, never fully one thing or another, existing in the painful space between. He circled her like a predator assessing prey, each step deliberate. Waiting, watching. Zara realized what he was waiting for: the shift. The moment her wolf would rise to meet his dominance, would bristle and challenge him, would trigger the blood rage the guards had whispered about. But she had no wolf to rise. She stood perfectly still, the way she'd learned to stand in Stone Valley when the pack forgot she existed. Invisible, empty, nothing to challenge, nothing to provoke. The beast leaned closer, so close she could feel the heat radiating from his body, could smell spice and copper and desert sand. His breath stirred her hair. He was smelling her, cataloging her scent the way wolves did. His growl shifted, became confused rather than threatening. "Why do you not shift, little bird?" His voice scraped out, each word clearly costing him effort. "Why do you not fight?" Zara looked up, met those burning gold eyes that should have terrified her into submission. "I have nothing to fight with, my lord," she said quietly, her voice steady despite everything. "I am Wolfless." The beast froze, completely, utterly still. "Wolfless," he repeated, and something changed in his tone. Not mockery, wonder. "You are hollow." Not an insult, an observation, a realization. He extended one massive hand, claws flexing, and touched her chin with a single claw carefully, as if she were something fragile. He tilted her face up toward the moonlight, studying her. His hand didn't shake. The violence that had been vibrating through his body eased. Just slightly, just enough that she could see the difference. His breathing deepened, slowed. The gold in his eyes flickered, brown showing through for just a heartbeat before the gold returned. "You calm it," he breathed, his voice rough with something that might have been hope if hope hadn't been beaten out of him decades ago. "You have no beast to bristle against mine." His hand fell away from her face. He staggered back a step, staring at his own palm as if it had betrayed him. 50 years, he whispered. Zara's mind was racing, putting pieces together the way she'd learned to piece together survival in the margins. Every bride before her had a wolf, strong wolves from strong bloodlines. Their presence had been a threat to his curse, triggering the rage. But she had nothing. She was the hollow space his wolf couldn't find purchase against. "What is your name?" His voice was quieter now, more human, though still wrong coming from that twisted throat. "Zara, from Stone Valley. Zara of Stone Valley." He tested her name like tasting something rare. "Why did they send you?" She could have lied, could have tried to make herself seem more valuable, less disposable. But lies had never saved her before. "I was rejected by my mate," she said simply, "then sold to pay pack debts." She met his eyes. "They said you kill your brides." I had nothing left to lose. Something passed across his inhuman face. Understanding, perhaps. Recognition. "We are both cursed, then." he said. Both monsters in our own ways. The words hung in the air between them. Two beings society had deemed broken, standing in moonlight that cared nothing for their pain. I will not force you to my bed tonight, Rashid said, gesturing to cushions piled in the corner. Sleep if you can. Tomorrow we will speak more. Zara blinked, surprised by the reprieve. She'd expected death or violation. Not consideration. Why? The question escaped before she could stop it. He looked at her over his massive shoulder, those gold eyes catching the moonlight. Because you do not fear me, he said. Then, softer, almost to himself. And I find I am curious why. He turned away, disappearing back into the shadows, leaving her alone in the vast chamber. Zara stood for a moment, heart still racing, mind trying to process what had just happened. Then she moved to the cushions, sank down onto them, and wrapped her arms around herself. In the corner of the room, she could see it, the small golden bell sitting on a table by the door. The bell no one had rung in 50 years. Her hand twitched toward it, but something stopped her. Curiosity? Exhaustion? The strange, impossible hope that maybe, just maybe, she'd found someone who understood what it meant to be called monster? Tomorrow, she thought. I'll decide tomorrow. She curled up on the cushions, her body finally acknowledging how exhausted she was. 3 days in a carriage, the bathing ritual, the fear, the impossible creature who'd just spared her life. In the shadows across the room, she could hear his breathing slower now, almost peaceful. He was still awake, too, watching her in the darkness. For the first time in 3 days, Zara felt something other than resignation. She felt alive. Chapter 5. Morning light streamed through the arches, painting the obsidian floor with gold. Zara woke slowly, disoriented. For a heartbeat, she didn't remember where she was. Then memory crashed back the rejection, the palace, the beast. She sat up quickly, looking around the vast chamber. He was gone. But breakfast had been laid out on a low table near the cushions, fresh fruit glistening with dew, flatbread still warm, honey in a small clay pot, mint tea steaming in a delicate cup. And beside the food, a note written in elegant script that seemed at odds with the clawed hand that must have penned it. Eat. I will return. Our Zara approached the food cautiously. It wasn't poisoned, why? Bring her here to poison her? She ate slowly, savoring flavors Stone Valley had never dreamed of. Dates sweet as sugar, oranges that burst on her tongue, bread that melted like clouds. She found a bathing chamber through one of the archways smaller than the servant's bath, but more beautiful. Blue and white tiles formed patterns like flowers, and the water ran clear and warm. She washed her face, combed her fingers through her hair, trying to feel human again. When she returned to the main chamber, he was there. Sultan Rashid stood in the morning light, and Zara stopped, staring. He was different. Still large, still inhuman, but less monstrous than he'd been by moonlight. His claws were shorter, more retracted. His face held more human proportions, though still wrong. His eyes were brown with gold flecks instead of burning gold pools. He looked like the curse was loosening its grip. You stayed, he said, and she heard surprise in his voice. You could have rung the bell. Zara glanced at the golden bell, still sitting untouched. Where would I go? She asked practically. I'm still your prisoner. Guest, he corrected, his tone firm. You are my guest, Zara of Stone Valley, not prisoner. The word hung between them, strange and significant. Guest implied choice, implied agency she hadn't expected to have. May I try something? He asked. And the fact that he asked that he requested permission was so foreign to her experience that she simply nodded, too surprised to do otherwise. He extended his hand, more human now than last night, though still tipped with claws. Touch my palm. Zara hesitated only a moment before reaching out. Her fingertips brushed his palm, warm and calloused and solid. The reaction was immediate. His breathing deepened, steadied. The tension drained from his massive shoulders like water from a cracked vessel. His eyes flickered fully brown for 3 full heartbeats, the gold receding completely. The scales on his arms seemed to fade slightly, skin showing through. "By the old stars," he breathed, voice thick with emotion. Zara felt something too, a warmth flowing from her, threw her hand into his. Not painful, just awareness, like heat leaving her body. Calming energy she hadn't known she possessed. "What's happening?" she whispered. Rashid pulled back, and immediately the shift began returning slower than before, but inevitable. He stared at his palm like it held answers to questions he'd stopped asking decades ago. "My curse is not just physical," he said, pacing now, trying to explain. "It's a rage that never stops. My wolf cannot distinguish threat from safety. Everything challenges, everything provokes." He turned to face her. "Every bride before you had strong wolves. Their presence was a threat to mine. It triggered the blood rage. I couldn't stop myself." His voice dropped. "But you have no wolf to challenge mine. More than that, you carry something else. Old magic. Moon magic." He came closer, and Zara could see something in his eyes she hadn't expected: hope, fighting with fear of hoping. "There are stories," he continued. "Once every 1,000 years, a woman is born without a wolf. Not cursed, blessed, called moon daughters. They can silence wolf rage with a touch, but they're legends, myths. I never thought." "You are not hollow, Zara," he said, his voice fierce with sudden conviction. "You are full of something we have forgotten how to see." The words struck something deep in Zara's chest. All her life, she'd been called empty, broken, nothing. And here was this cursed creature telling her she was full of magic so old the world had forgotten its name. "Will you help me test this?" Rashid asked, vulnerability threading through his voice. "I need to know if it's real, if you can, truly." He didn't finish. Couldn't finish. Too much hope was dangerous when you'd lived without it for 50 years. Zara looked at him, this broken king who'd shown her more respect in 12 hours than her pack had in 20 years. Who asked permission? Who called her guest? Who saw her as full instead of empty? "What do I do?" she asked simply. Relief flooded his face. "Come with me." He led her down from the high chamber, through corridors of increasing grandeur away from the servants' underground, toward the palace proper. Here, the walls blazed with geometric patterns in gold and lapis lazuli, mosaics depicting stars and moons and abstract shapes that seemed to shift as they passed. Carved screens let in dappled light, and the air smelled of jasmine and sandalwood. They emerged into a private courtyard, enclosed by high walls and open to the sky. Sand covered the ground here, raked into patterns like water. Training equipment lined the walls, weapons, weights, obstacles meant for warriors. "I will shift fully," Rashid said, his voice tight with controlled fear. "It always brings the rage. If you can calm me." He didn't finish, didn't dare speak the hope aloud. "Just touch me," he said. "When I'm lost, touch me and call me back." Zara nodded, though her heart was hammering. She'd seen him in half form. What would he be as a full beast? Rashid stepped back, rolled his shoulders, and began the shift. His bones cracked, loud as breaking wood. His body expanded, muscles bulging, fur erupting in waves of black. His face elongated to a full muzzle, teeth like daggers. He grew 8 feet, 9 feet, until he towered over her, a massive black wolf with scales glinting like obsidian armor. Lycan. Not just wolf, but something older, more primal. The ancestors of all shifters, from the time when the boundaries between worlds were thin. His eyes blazed gold again. She could see recognition fading, humanity drowning in the tide of rage that always came with this form. He snarled, taking a step toward her. Predatory, dangerous. The same look the other girls had triggered right before he lost control completely. Zara's every instinct screamed to run. But running would trigger the hunt. Standing still might give her seconds. Or she could do what he'd asked. She stepped forward, toward the beast that had killed 12 brides. Reached up, he was so tall, and placed her palm flat against his chest, over where his heart thundered like war drums. "Rashid," she called, her voice steady despite her fear. "I'm here. You're safe. Come back." For a heartbeat, nothing happened. The snarl continued, claws flexing toward her throat. Then, like ice melting in spring sun, something shifted. The gold in his eyes flickered. His body shuddered, fighting against the rage. Zara felt the fire under her palm, the fury trying to consume him, and she pushed back with that strange warmth she'd felt this morning, that calming energy that flowed from her like moonlight given form. "Come back to me," she repeated softly. Rashid's snarl cut off. His body convulsed once, twice, then began shrinking. The shift reversed faster than it had come, fur receding, bones realigning, until he stood before her in human form, gasping. He fell to his knees in the sand, looking up at her with wonder and something close to worship. "You did it." His voice was hoarse, broken. 50 years, and you brought me back." Zara's hand was still on his chest. She could feel his heart slowing beneath her palm, steadying to a human rhythm. "No one has ever brought me back," he whispered. Their eyes locked. Something passed between them in that moment, not attraction, not yet, but recognition deeper than desire. Two souls who understood what it meant to be called broken, seeing wholeness in each other. Rashid's hand came up to cover hers, holding it against his heart. "Your gift is stronger than my curse," he said. In the bright morning light of the courtyard, with sand beneath them and sky above, Zara felt the hollow place in her chest, the place where her wolf should have been filled with something else. Purpose. Chapter 6. 3 weeks passed like a dream Zara kept expecting to end. The pattern settled into comfortable routine. Mornings, she woke in chambers. Rashid had given her her own rooms in the palace proper, filled with cushions and silks and luxuries she'd never imagined. Breakfast was always waiting, sometimes with small gifts beside the food, a book of poetry, a comb carved from sandalwood, a shawl woven with threads of silver. He never forced his presence on her, just provided. By midday, they'd meet in his private library, a circular room lined floor to ceiling with scrolls and codices from every corner of the known world. Zara would read, curled on cushions, while Rashid worked through correspondence or simply watched her with something like contentment. "What are you reading?" he asked one afternoon, settling across from her. She held up the scroll. "The Histories of the Sand Kings," the chapter about the Treaty of Shifting Dunes. They talked for hours, about governance, philosophy, the nature of justice. She challenged his assumptions about pack hierarchy. He introduced her to concepts of desert law that had evolved over millennia. When she made a point he hadn't considered, he laughed, a real laugh, rusty but genuine. "You should have been born into education," he said. "I should have been born with a wolf," she countered automatically. He shook his head, suddenly serious. "Then you couldn't have saved me." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. "What if saving you was why I was born this way?" Zara said softly. Rashid reached for her hand, threaded his fingers through hers. His claws were barely visible now, mostly retracted. "Then I am grateful the goddess made you exactly as you are." Afternoons, they walked the palace gardens. Rashid showed her the desert flowers that bloomed only at dusk, their petals like flames in the fading light. He taught her the names of stars in the ancient language, pointing to constellations that Stone Valley had never mapped. The servants noticed the change. They smiled now, moved through the corridors without the constant tension that had marked them before. Yasmin remained stern, but Zara caught her looking at them sometimes with something almost like hope. The other 5 brides had been sent home with gold and promises of alliance. They weren't needed. Zara was enough. One evening in the garden, as the sun painted the sky in shades of copper and amber, Rashid sat on a bench carved from pale stone. Zara stood before him, her hair loose and wild from the desert wind. "Your hair," he said softly. "May I?" She turned, confused, and he produced a comb from his robes. "Sit." Zara sat between his knees, and he began combing her hair carefully, gently, his clawed fingers surprisingly deft. No one had ever done this for her. In Stone Valley, her hair had been her burden to manage alone. His hands were gentle, patient, taking their time with each tangle, never pulling or hurting. Zara's eyes closed. For the first time in her life, she felt safe. "Zara," Rashid murmured, his hands pausing in her hair. She turned to look up at him, and his face was so close. His eyes, fully brown now, gold only a shimmer at the edges, searched hers. He began. "My Sultan!" A guard burst into the garden, breathing hard. "Forgive the intrusion, but there's an emergency. Delegation at the gates demanding audience." Rashid's jaw tightened, but he stood, his hand lingering on Zara's shoulder. "Who?" "Stone Valley, my lord." Zara's blood turned to ice. Chapter 7. The throne room was unlike anything Zara had seen in the palace. Vast and tall, with pillars carved to look like palm trees reaching toward a dome painted with stars. The floor was a mosaic of the desert sky constellations in lapis lazuli and gold against midnight blue stone. Rashid sat on the throne, a massive seat of black wood and beaten gold. He wore full royal regalia now, robes of deep blue embroidered with gold thread, a circlet of gold across his brow. He looked every inch the Sultan, powerful and remote. Zara stood beside the throne, not behind it, not hidden away, beside it, as Rashid had insisted, a position of honor that made the visiting noble's eyes widen. She wore palace silks now deep purple, the color of twilight, her hair braided with gold chains. She looked like she belonged here, felt like she belonged here, in a way she'd never belonged anywhere. "Show them in," Rashid commanded, his voice echoing through the hall. The doors opened. Kale strode in, and Zara's breath caught despite herself. He looked terrible, thinner than she remembered, his golden hair dull, his skin pale. The broken mate bond was killing him slowly, the way the legends said it would when you rejected your true match. Behind him came 5 warriors, hands on sword hilts, and her father, and Alara, her sister, eyes wide and searching until they found Zara. Kael's gaze swept the throne room, dismissive, until he saw Zara standing beside Rashid. His steps faltered. "Zara!" Disbelief colored his voice. "You're alive?" She said nothing, just stood there in her purple silks and gold chains, looking nothing like the broken girl he'd sold 3 weeks ago. Kael recovered quickly, straightening his spine. He bowed to Rashid barely, the minimum respect required. "I've come to reclaim property stolen from Stone Valley," he announced, voice hard with false confidence. "A bride was taken without proper negotiation. I demand her return and compensation." Rashid's expression didn't change, but Zara felt the temperature in the room drop. "What bride?" Rashid asked, his voice dangerously soft. "Zara, the Wolfless girl." Kael waved his hand dismissively. "She was tribute, but the terms were violated. She belongs to Stone Valley." "She belongs to no one," Rashid said, standing. His presence filled the room, undeniable and absolute. "But if she were to belong anywhere," he gestured to Zara. She stepped forward, removing the delicate veil that had partially covered her face. Kael's eyes went wide. He was seeing her truly now, not the cowering servant he remembered, but someone who stood tall beside a sultan, who met his eyes without flinching. "You're alive," he repeated stupidly. "Did you expect otherwise?" Zara asked, her voice steady. Kael's shock shifted to something uglier. Desperation edged with anger. "Pack your things. We're leaving." "No." The simple word hung in the air. Kael blinked as if he'd misheard. "You're my mate," he said, stepping forward. Palace guards moved to intercept him. "The rejection is killing me. My wolf is dying without you. I need you back. Need, not want, not love. Need." "You rejected that bond," Rashid said, his voice cutting through the hall like a blade. "It died with your choice. She owes you nothing." Kale's face flushed red. You can't keep her. I'm her alpha. You were her alpha, Zara corrected quietly. You gave up that right when you sold me. Something in Kale snapped. His desperation transformed into rage. The rage of a man who'd made a terrible mistake and couldn't undo it. Who was dying slowly because of his own choices and couldn't accept responsibility. If I can't have her, he snarled, his eyes starting to shift to wolf gold. Then I'll make sure you can't either. He shifted, bones cracking, fur erupting, his wolf form emerging in the middle of the throne room. His warriors followed suit, 5 wolves suddenly filling the space with snarling menace. The palace guards drew weapons. Courtiers scattered, but Kale's eyes were fixed on Zara, and she recognized the look. If he couldn't reclaim her, he'd destroy her. Rashid's shift began, the curse triggered by threat, rage building to blood rage. His body started expanding, bones cracking, the beast emerging. But Zara stepped between them, stepped between the monster and the alpha, her hand reaching for Rashid's arm. I'm here, she said, her voice cutting through the chaos. I'm safe. You're safe. But it wasn't working as well as it had before. Kale's presence, his accusations, his claims of ownership they'd gotten into her head, made her doubt, made her wonder if Rashid valued her gift or valued her. You're a tool, Zara, Kale had said once, long ago. Always useful for something, never valued for yourself. Her touch wavered. The calming energy flickered like a candle in wind. Rashid's eyes flashed full gold. The shift was coming whether she could stop it or not. See? Kale laughed, circling them in wolf form. Even he can't control himself around you. You're poison to everyone, Zara. Better to come home where you can't do any more damage. The words struck like physical blows. All her old wounds, reopened. All her doubts, given voice. Was she just a tool? Just a means to manage Rashid's curse? Had anyone ever wanted her for herself? Her hand dropped from Rashid's arm. He gasped as the rage surged back, uncontrolled. His shift completed, the massive Lycan form emerging fully, 9 feet of claws and fury and loss of reason. Kale's wolves attacked. The throne room erupted into chaos, wolves and guards and screaming courtiers. Rashid, lost to blood rage, lashed out at everything moving. Palace guards tried to contain him, but he was too strong, too far gone. And Kale, in his wolf form, was coming straight for Zara. Yasmin appeared from nowhere, pressing a dagger into Zara's hand. Defend yourself, girl. Zara had never held a weapon, never trained to fight. She was the pack's weakest member, the one who'd survived by being invisible. But she wasn't invisible anymore. Kale lunged. Zara reacted on instinct, slashed upward. The blade caught his shoulder, drawing blood across white fur. He yelped, stumbling back, shocked that she'd fought at all. I am not yours to take, Zara said, her voice stronger than she'd ever heard it. Something stirred in her chest, not a wolf, but something else. Something ancient that recognized an alpha trying to dominate her and refused. Absolutely refused. Stop! The word ripped from her throat. Not a shout, a command. Power behind it that came from somewhere deep and old and absolute. Kale froze mid-lunge, his legs locked. He hit the ground, unable to move, limbs rigid with enforced submission. Every wolf in the room, Kale's warriors, the palace guards who were shifted, they all felt it. A compulsion to obey that bypassed conscious thought and went straight to instinct. Zara stared at her own hand, shocked. That power, where had it come from? But it was already fading, her inexperience making it slip away like water through fingers. Kale broke free of the momentary paralysis, scrambled to his feet, and ran, his wolves following, fleeing the throne room in desperate retreat. And Rashid, still in blood rage, roared and charged after them, out of the throne room, into the courtyard beyond, where palace servants walked, where innocence stood in his path. No, Zara screamed, running after him. The courtyard was chaos. Rashid's massive Lycan form crashed through, seeing only threats, only challenges. A palace guard tried to calm him. Rashid's claws caught him across the chest, sending him flying. The man hit a pillar and didn't move. More guards, more servants in his path. He would kill them all, couldn't stop himself. This was why the curse was a curse, not just the pain of transformation, but the loss of everything that made him human. The inability to distinguish friend from foe. The unstoppable tide of rage that turned him into exactly the monster everyone feared. Zara ran into the courtyard, her purple silks tearing, her elaborate braids coming loose. She had to reach him, had to calm him before he killed someone who'd shown her nothing but kindness. But he was too far away. Too many people between them. Too much chaos. She would have to use that power again. That command that had frozen Kale. She didn't know how, didn't understand what it was. But people were going to die if she didn't try. Zara stopped in the center of the courtyard, closed her eyes, and reached for that place inside her where the power had come from. That hollow space that everyone said was empty but Rashid said was full. She found it moonlight and stillness, and a voice that belonged to something older than wolves, older than shifters, older than the desert itself. She opened her eyes. They were glowing silver, she could feel it, could feel moonlight pouring through her. Rashid. His name carried across the courtyard, cutting through screams and snarls and chaos, not shouting, commanding. Voice given form, will made manifest. The alpha voice that only moon daughters carried. Rashid's roar cut off, his massive head turned toward her, gold eyes meeting her silver ones. "Come back to me," she said, softer now but still with that power threading through. "You are not the rage. You are Rashid, Sultan of Azar, and I need you." She walked toward him, ignoring the guards trying to pull her back. Walked, right up to 9 feet of claws and fury, and placed both hands on his chest. The power flowed from her like light from the moon. Constant, patient, inevitable. Not forcing, just being. The way moonlight doesn't force darkness away but simply offers another way of seeing. Rashid shuddered. His snarl became a whimper. His massive form began to shrink, bones cracking in reverse, fur receding, until he was man again, naked and gasping and collapsing to his knees before her. "Zara," he breathed, looking up at her with something close to worship. I could have, but you didn't," she said, sinking down beside him, wrapping her arms around him while he shook. "I brought you back." The courtyard had gone silent. Every guard, every servant, every noble who'd witnessed it, they were all staring. Then Yasmin, stern Yasmin who'd tormented her weeks ago, dropped to one knee. "A moon daughter," she breathed. "In our lifetime." The captain of the guard, the man Rashid had nearly killed, knelt despite his injuries. Then his guards. Then the other servants. Then the nobles who'd witnessed everything. One by one, they knelt, until the entire courtyard was bowed before her. "What are you doing?" Zara asked, uncomfortable with the veneration. "Please, get up." But they didn't move. They'd seen what she was, what she could do. They'd seen the impossible made real. Chapter 8. The courtyard remained silent, every soul kneeling before Zara, except for Rashid, who still knelt for different reasons: exhaustion, wonder, and something deeper that made her heart ache. Amira was the first to speak, her aged voice carrying across the stone. "The legends were true. The moon daughter walks among us." Zara helped Rashid to his feet, and servants quickly brought him robes. He dressed with the efficiency of a warrior, his eyes never leaving her face. "Are you hurt?" he asked, hands hovering near her shoulders, not quite touching, as if afraid she might break. "No. You? You brought me back." His voice was rough with emotion. "In the middle of blood rage, surrounded by threats. You brought me back. No one has ever—" He couldn't finish. A groan from across the courtyard interrupted them. The guard captain, the man Rashid had struck, was being tended by healers. Alive. Injured. But alive. "Forgive me," Rashid called to him, genuine anguish in his voice. "I couldn't. My Sultan." The captain's voice was pained but steady. "We all knew the risk. And we witnessed the miracle." He looked at Zara. "She is the cure we've prayed for." But Zara shook her head. "I'm not a cure. The curse isn't broken. Every eye in the courtyard fixed on her. It's managed, she continued, her voice gaining strength. Because of what I am, but Rashid is still who he is. The curse is still there. We just hold it at bay together. Rashid's hand found hers, squeezed gently. Together, he echoed. The sound of running feet made everyone turn. Kyle burst back into the courtyard, human now, bleeding from his shoulder, his remaining warriors flanking him. But he wasn't attacking. His eyes were wild with something beyond rage. Desperation. You have to come back, he gasped, directed at Zara. I'm dying. Can't you feel it? The bond even rejected, it's killing me. My wolf is fading. The pack is failing without their alpha's strength. Alara, Zara's sister, stepped forward from where she'd been standing with the Stone Valley delegation. Zara, please. Her voice broke. The pack is starving. Father is sick. Kale's weakness has spread to all of us. Zara looked at her sister, the girl who tried to step forward during the rejection, whose voice had been silenced by their mother's hand. I'm sorry, Alara, Zara said gently, but I can't fix what Kale broke. Then let me. Kale snarled, his desperation curdling into fury. If you won't come willingly, I'll take you. He grabbed Alara, pulling her against him, claws emerging at her throat. Her life for yours. Choose. The courtyard erupted. Guards moved forward. Rashid's shift began again, rage triggered by threat to Zara. But Zara felt something else rising in her, not fear, but something ancient and absolute. That place inside her where moonlight lived, where the goddess's voice had made its home in the hollow space where a wolf should have been. She didn't need to touch him, didn't need proximity. She had the voice. And the voice commanded. Kale. Not shouting. Not even speaking loudly. But her voice carried across the courtyard with the weight of mountains, the inevitability of tides, the absolute authority of the moon pulling at the blood of every shifter present. Her eyes blazed silver, brighter than before. The power wasn't flickering now, it was steady, controlled, hers to wield. Release her. Kale's claws retracted from Alara's throat against his will. His arms fell to his sides. He tried to fight it, muscles straining, but his body wouldn't obey him. Couldn't obey him. Because she was Moon Daughter, and the voice of the goddess superseded any alpha's claim. Alara stumbled away, and Rashid's guards caught her gently, pulling her to safety. Kneel, Zara commanded. Kale's legs buckled. He hit the stone hard, knees cracking against obsidian, and couldn't rise, couldn't shift, couldn't do anything but stare up at her in shock and growing horror. She walked toward him slowly, and every wolf in the courtyard, guards, visitors, even Rashid's Lycan blood felt the pull to submit. Some dropped to one knee voluntarily. Others fought it, but their instincts screamed obedience. Zara stopped before Kale, looking down at the alpha who had rejected her, sold her, tried to reclaim her by force. You rejected me to save your bloodline, she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the courtyard. You chose status over fate, power over love, and now your bloodline ends with you. Kale's face had gone white. Zara, please. I am not yours to command, she continued, and her voice resonated with that ancient power. I am not yours to claim. I am not yours to take. I am moon-chosen, goddess-blessed, and I choose my own fate. She turned away from him, walked back to Rashid, and the silver faded from her eyes as she released the command. Kale collapsed forward, gasping, but he was still breathing, still alive. Take him to the dungeons, Rashid ordered. We will decide his fate tomorrow, when cooler heads prevail. As guards dragged Kale away, Zara felt the exhaustion hit her. Using the voice took something from her not painfully, but it left her hollow in a different way. Empty in the way a vessel is empty after pouring itself out. Rashid caught her as she swayed. I've got you, he murmured, lifting her into his arms. I've got you. He carried her from the courtyard, away from the kneeling crowds and shocked nobles, back to the quiet of his private chambers. Chapter 9. Zara woke in Rashid's chambers, in the vast bed piled with silks and cushions. Moonlight streamed through the arches, a full moon now, bright and perfect. Rashid sat in a chair beside the bed, watching her sleep. He'd changed into simpler robes, his hair damp from bathing. Human. Completely human. No partial shift, no claws, no scales. "How long was I asleep?" she asked. 6 hours. He moved to sit on the bed's edge. "Using the voice exhausts you. The histories say moon daughters need rest after channeling that much power." "You've been reading about moon daughters?" "I've been reading everything I can find." He smiled, and it transformed his face, made him look younger, less burdened. "Trying to understand what you are. What you can do." "What we can do," Zara corrected. "It doesn't work without you. We calm each other." Rashid's hand found hers on the silk sheets. "Zara, there's something I need to say. Something I should have said before Kael arrived and everything became chaos." His thumb traced circles on her palm, and she felt her heart begin to race. "When you first came here, I expected death. Mine or yours, I wasn't certain. I thought perhaps the curse would kill us both and end 50 years of suffering." He paused, gathering words. "But then you calmed the rage, and I realized I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living. Because of you." He brought her hand to his lips, pressed a kiss to her knuckles. "Kael was wrong when he said you're a tool to me. You are not a means to manage my curse. You are—" his voice caught. "You are everything. The reason I wake hoping to see the sunrise, the reason I want to be better than the monster they all feared. You saw past the beast to the man, and you chose me anyway." Tears gathered in Zara's eyes. "Rashid, let me finish." He slid from the bed, and her breath caught as he knelt beside it, not in submission, but in offering. "I know what you've survived. Rejection, sale, being called hollow and broken and worthless. I cannot undo those wounds, but I can promise you this. I will spend every day showing you that you are whole, complete, precious, beyond measure." From his robes, he produced a ring, simple gold, with a moonstone that glowed in the moonlight. "Zara of Stone Valley, moon daughter. Rage calmer. Keeper of my heart, will you be my sultana? Not because I need you, though I do. Not because of your gift, though it is wondrous, but because I choose you, as you chose me." The tears spilled over. "I have no dowry," she whispered. "No pack status. No, you have yourself." He held the ring steady, his hand not shaking. "That is worth more than all the kingdoms of the world. Say yes, Zara. Please say yes." "Yes." The word came out broken, joyful. "Yes, I'll marry you." He slid the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly, the moonstone catching the light like captured moon itself. Then he rose, and she pulled him down to her, their lips meeting for the first time. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, learning the shape of each other, then deeper, years of loneliness pouring into it. Two people who'd been called monsters finding home in each other's arms. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Rashid pressed his forehead to hers. "I love you," he said. "I should have said it first, but I love you too." Zara smiled through her tears. "Both parts of you, man and beast, sultan and curse, all of it." They stayed like that, holding each other as the moon traced its path across the sky until dawn painted the eastern horizon gold. Morning brought the matter of Kael's judgment, the throne room filled with nobles, courtiers, and witnesses. But this time, a second throne sat beside Rashid's smaller but no less beautiful, carved from white wood and inlaid with silver and moonstone. Zara sat in it, wearing robes of white and silver, a circlet of silver across her brow, sultana in waiting. Rashid had announced their betrothal at dawn, and the palace had erupted in celebration. Kael was brought before them in chains. He looked broken, not just physically, though the rejected mate bond was clearly killing him, but spiritually. The arrogance that had defined him was gone, leaving only hollow regret. "Kael of Stone Valley." Rashid's voice filled the throne room. You stand accused of assault on the Sultana-elect, of threatening her family, of attempting abduction. How do you plead? Guilty, Kale said quietly. Of all of it. He looked up at Zara. I'm sorry. I know it means nothing now, but I am sorry. I was a coward. I chose wrong. And by the time I realized it, I'd already destroyed everything. Zara studied him. The man who'd rejected her, sold her, tried to take her back by force. The man who was dying slowly because he'd severed a bond the goddess had woven. The rejected mate bond is killing you, she said. How long do you have? Months. Maybe weeks. He shrugged, the gesture defeated. It doesn't matter. It matters to your pack, to Alara, to my father. Rashid turned to her, surprised. Zara, you're not suggesting, I'm not forgiving him, she said clearly. I'm acknowledging that his death will hurt people I love, people who aren't responsible for his choices. She stood, descended from her throne, and approached Kale. He flinched as if expecting a blow. This is my judgment, she announced, her voice carrying through the hall. Kale, you are banished from the Sultanate of Azar. You will return to Stone Valley. You will face the consequences of your choices. The broken bond will continue to kill you slowly, and you will live with that. You will watch your pack struggle because of your weakness, and every day, you will remember that you had something precious, and you threw it away for pride. She leaned closer, her voice dropping so only he could hear. That is a worse punishment than death, and we both know it. Kale's face crumpled. I know. Zara straightened, addressing the court. However, I will send aid to Stone Valley. Food, medicine, trade agreements. Not for him, she gestured to Kale, but for the innocent people suffering because of his mistake. My sister, my father, the pack members who had no say in what happened to me. She turned to Alara, who stood among the Stone Valley delegation. Alara, you tried to help me. I haven't forgotten. You're welcome here anytime. All of Stone Valley's innocent are welcome. Tears streaked down Alara's face. Thank you, she mouthed. Rashid stood, coming to Zara's side. The judgment is sound. KL, you have 1 day to leave our lands. If you return, the sentence is death. Guards led KL away. He looked back once at Zara, and she saw the weight of his regret. Good. Let him carry it. Let him live with what he'd lost. As the throne room emptied, Rashid pulled Zara into his arms. You are merciful and wise. A true queen. Not queen yet, she said. Tomorrow, he promised. Tomorrow you will be. Chapter 10. 1 month later, the Onyx Palace blazed with light and life. The coronation had been magnificent, hundreds of nobles from across the Sultanate and beyond, all come to witness the impossible. A moon daughter crowned Sultana, a curse tamed, a king made whole. Now, on a warm evening, with the moon rising, fat and full, Zara stood on a balcony overlooking the palace grounds, where a celebration continued below. Music drifted up, drums and flutes, the sound of joy unrestrained. Rashid joined her, wrapping his arms around her waist from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. He was fully human tonight, had been fully human for weeks now. The curse still existed, it always would, but with Zara at his side, he could manage it, could control it, could be the man rather than the monster. Happy? He murmured against her ear, deliriously. She leaned back into him. Though I'm still getting used to the title, Sultana Zara. It sounds strange. It sounds perfect. He kissed her temple. The people love you already. Did you see how the market vendors bowed today? Not from fear, from genuine respect. It was true. The Sultanate had transformed in a month. With the curse managed, Rashid had opened the palace, had ridden through the streets, had met with his people for the first time in decades, and Zara had ridden beside him, the moon daughter who'd tamed the beast. Speaking of people loving you, Rashid said, amusement in his voice, there's a delegation waiting to see you. They've come from far away specifically to meet the legendary Moon Daughter. Zara turned in his arms. Another one? That's the third this week. You're famous. He grinned. The woman who commanded an alpha to kneel, who brought a cursed king back from blood rage, who became Sultana despite being wolfless. They want to see if the stories are true. The stories are probably exaggerated. Not even a little, Rashid said, kissing her. If anything, they don't do you justice. Below in the throne room, the delegation waited alphas from 3 different territories, come to pay their respects, and, Zara suspected, to test whether she was truly what the legends claimed. She entered the throne room in her coronation robes, white silk, embroidered with silver thread in patterns of moons and stars. Her hair flowed loose down her back, held only by the silver circlet that marked her as Sultana. Rashid walked beside her, magnificent in deep blue and gold. They took their thrones equal now, side by side, as all the Sultanate had witnessed. The lead alpha, a broad-shouldered man with gray at his temples, bowed deeply. Sultana, we come seeking knowledge. The legends speak of alpha voice, but we've never witnessed it. Would you honor us with a demonstration? It was a test, obviously, a challenge wrapped in courtesy. Zara smiled. You wish me to command you? If you can, the alpha said, his tone respectful but skeptical. She stood, descended from her throne, and walked toward him. He was easily twice her size, radiating dominance, an alpha who'd probably never submitted to anyone. Very well, she said softly. Kneel. She didn't shout, barely spoke above a conversational tone, but power threaded through the word moonlight-given voice, the goddess speaking through her vessel. The alpha's knees buckled instantly. He hit the floor with a grunt of surprise, and couldn't rise. His eyes went wide with shock and something close to awe. By the old stars, he breathed. Behind him, his entire delegation had dropped to their knees as well, unable to resist the pull of her voice. I am Moon Daughter, Zara said, her voice carrying through the throne room. Blessed by the goddess, keeper of the voice that all wolves must heed. I do not use this gift to dominate. I use it to protect, to maintain balance, to ensure that power is wielded with wisdom rather than cruelty. She released the command, and they rose shakily. This is the new way, she continued. Strength is not measured by violence alone. Sometimes the strongest thing is mercy. Sometimes wisdom is knowing when not to fight, and sometimes being called broken is the world's failure to see your true value. The alpha bowed again, deeper this time. Forgive my skepticism, Sultana. The legends did not do you justice. The legends rarely do, Rashid said from his throne, pride evident in his voice. But you've seen the truth now. Azar is blessed. As the delegation departed, promising alliance and trade, Zara returned to her throne. Rashid took her hand, threaded his fingers through hers. You're going to change the world, he said quietly. Not just Azar. Everywhere. The way people think about power, about worth, about what it means to be strong. We're going to change it, Zara corrected. Together. Together, he agreed. That night, on the balcony under the full moon, Zara stood with her husband, the words still new and wonderful, and looked out over the desert that stretched endlessly under starlight. Do you ever think about Stone Valley? Rashid asked. Sometimes, she admitted. Not with longing. Just remembering where I came from, how far I've traveled, from rejected and sold to Sultana and Moon Daughter. He pulled her close. The greatest journey in history. Zara thought about it, about the girl who'd stood in the blood moon circle expecting nothing, hoping for nothing, certain she was hollow and broken and worthless, about the long journey through the desert, the stripping ritual, the terror of facing a beast, about finding out that being called empty just meant she was a vessel waiting to be filled with something the world had forgotten, that being called broken meant she saw cracks where light could enter, that having nothing meant she had everything to gain. You know what I realized? She said. They called me Wolfless because they thought wolves were what gave value. But I wasn't cursed with emptiness. I was blessed with the space for something greater. The moon's voice, where others only had the wolf's growl. Rashid's arms tightened around her. The greatest blessings often look like curses, until someone has the wisdom to see differently. In the courtyard below, the celebration continued. Music and laughter and joy, a palace that had known only fear for 50 years, now filled with light. And somewhere in Stone Valley, Kale lived with his regret, his broken bond slowly killing him, watching his pack struggle because of choices he couldn't undo, learning, too late, what he'd thrown away. But Zara didn't think about him often anymore. He was part of her past, and her past was no longer a wound. It was simply the road that had led her here. To the man who'd seen her as full when everyone else called her empty. To the power that had been waiting inside her all along. To the throne beside a king who'd been called monster and had learned to be man again. To home. "I love you," she said, turning in Rashid's arms to face him. "I love you," he replied, and kissed her under the full moon. In the palace where she'd expected to die and instead had learned to truly live. The moon watched, ancient and patient and knowing. And somewhere in that light, the goddess smiled, because the girl everyone called broken had just proven herself whole. The beast everyone feared had found his humanity, and the love everyone said was impossible had transformed a kingdom. Zara had been rejected by her mate for being wolfless. But the Lycan king had knelt before her not in submission, but in recognition. Because she was never nothing. She had always been everything. She just needed the right person to see it. Epilogue. 1 year later. The council chamber was packed with visiting dignitaries. Alphas, betas, pack leaders from territories spanning 3 kingdoms. They'd come for the annual gathering, where disputes were settled and alliances renewed. And they'd come to see her. Zara sat on her throne, visibly pregnant now, her hand resting on the swell of her belly. Beside her, Rashid looked every inch the powerful sultan, but his eyes kept drifting to her with undisguised adoration. The miracle, the healers had called it. The woman pronounced Barren, carrying twins. A boy and a girl, they'd said. Heirs to the sultanate. But Zara knew better. It wasn't miracle. It was love. Kale had rejected her when she couldn't give him children, had called her defective, had sold her as worthless. And the broken bond had told her body it wasn't wanted, wasn't valued, wasn't worthy of creating life. But Rashid had chosen her knowing she might never conceive, had valued her for her mind, her gift, herself, had loved her so completely that her body had finally believed what he'd always known. She was not broken. She was whole. She was wanted. She was home. And so life had taken root, where everyone said it couldn't. Where she'd been told it was impossible. Because the greatest impossibilities are often just truths waiting for the right conditions to bloom. A dispute arose between 2 alphas, voices rising, tempers flaring. Before Rashid could intervene, Zara stood. "Enough," she said, and though she didn't raise her voice, didn't channel the full alpha voice, there was enough power in the word to make both alphas stop mid-argument. They turned to her, and she saw it in their eyes, respect. Not fear, not forced submission, but genuine respect for her wisdom, her fairness, her strength. "You both have grievances," she said. "You both feel wronged, but you're both so focused on being right that you've forgotten the goal is peace, not victory." She walked between them, her pregnant belly making the gesture somehow more powerful, life itself interceding in conflict. "This is how we move forward," she said. "Not by dominating each other, not by proving who's strongest, but by recognizing that true strength is building something together that neither of you could build alone." The alphas looked at each other. Then, slowly, they bowed to her not in submission, but in acknowledgement. "Sultana's wisdom," one said. "Moon Daughter's guidance," the other agreed. As the council continued, settling dispute after dispute through Zara's mediation and Rashid's judgment, word of it spread through the palace. through the city, through the territories beyond. The moon daughter who had been rejected, sold, called worthless and hollow and broken, who now carried life and peace and wisdom in equal measure, who proved every single day that being different didn't mean being less. It meant being exactly what the world needed, even if the world was too blind to see it at first. Night fell. The dignitaries departed to their quarters, and Zara stood once more on her balcony, Rashid's arms around her, his hands resting on her belly where their children grew. "They'll never know what you survived," he said quietly. "Our children. They'll be born into love and acceptance. They'll never understand what it cost you to get here." "Good," Zara said. "Let them be born into a better world. Let them never know what it feels like to be called worthless. That's the whole point." She looked up at the moon, full and bright and constant, the same moon that had watched her rejection, the same moon that had blessed her with its voice, the same moon that had guided her from the blood moon circle to this balcony, from death sentence to throne. "Thank you," she whispered to it, for the hollow space that had held the moon's voice, for the emptiness that had been fullness all along, for the journey from broken to whole, from nothing to everything, from rejected to revered. The moon's light fell on her like a benediction, and Zara smiled, because she finally understood the truth the goddess had known all along. She was never cursed with being wolfless. She was blessed with being moon-kissed, and that made all the difference.